Today's shir, we're in the week of Parshas Vayera, the week of also the Yortzeit of Rachel Imeinu. An important week, a week in which we focus on our avos, and as always we learn in a context of the bigger picture. Where is Klal Yisrael at? Where are we headed? What is our avodat hayom today? Not just conceptually, but practically, right? We're in a very special period of time. And we're in a very special place. We're living the life that many generations of Jews hope to live. And how well are we doing it? And are we being successful? And what can we do to perhaps be even more successful? Okay, so last week we introduced the idea of the difference between Noach and Avrohom. I want to go a little bit more into this and also present two more figures, one being Bilam, one being Rachel Imeinu, and to show the point of departure between Am Yisrael and Umas HaOlam and Eretz Yisroel, which is a very important point. So number one is, as you recall, we defined Noach as an ish Tzadik, right? Tammim haya bedorotav. So there's two verbs there. One is Tzadik, and the other one is Tammim. What is the difference between a Tzadik and a Tammim? And remember, there's a machlokas whether Noach was Tammim haya b'dorosav, but in the generation of Avram, would he be considered the same? Now, but that goes on the word Tammim. Let's remember, right? Tammim haya b'dorosav. So there's a Tzadik, what we call a regular Tzadik, and then there's a second level of Tzadik called Tzadik Tammim. What's the difference between the two? So this I heard from Mishal Marsh, a very simple idea that the Rambam says in Hilchos Tshuva that a person who has more mitzvos than averos is defined as a Tzadik. You could be 51% and you are already in the category of Tzadik. Not bad. Now, it's an amazing thing to be a tzaddik or a tzaddikus, but there's a much higher level. The next level above that, way above that, is the level of Tammim. Tammim means what? Shalem, which means a perfect tzaddik. And a perfect tzaddik is 100%, meaning they're not doing mitzvos on the level of 51% and above. They're doing on the mitzvos on the level of close to 100%. So in Noach's generation, Noach could be viewed as a tzaddik tamim, relevant to everybody else, because compared to what everybody else was doing, he was, pretty much 100%. But with relevant to Avram's generation, he was certainly not. So the question is, why not? What does Avram's generation have to do that qualifies it? What's really the difference between Avram and Noach? Both. And in fact, we said that Noach actually physically does an awful lot more than Avram does, right? Noach builds the teva. Noach feeds the animals. Noach has to scientifically understand how to design an ark, how to make it waterproof, following Hashem's design. He's like an engineer that got a blueprint from Hashem, but they executed it, and executed it successfully. As we define Noach as the master scientist. He was a master scientist. How do we know? Because when he was born, what did they say about him? Ze yenachameno mi'itzbonenu, right? V'itzbon yodenu min ha'adama. They had a lot of suffering from the ground, right? What was the itzbon yodenu, the suffering of their hands? So the Medrash tells us that until Noach, human hands were closed due to the curse of Adam. We were closed. Noach was born with open fingers. And they said, this is a sign from Hashem that things are getting better. The curse of Avrohom is being alleviated. And he was right. Because, sorry? The curse of Adam, was being alleviated. And we were reaching the next level. But as we know, the Mishnah tells us in Avos, 10 generations from Adam until Noach, so those first 10 generations had the problem. Noach represented a new hope for mankind, but ultimately it didn't concretize. right? Because the Mabul happened. And once the Mabul happened, Noach was not the Tzadik Tammim. We needed something better. Because in Noach's generation, how many human beings survived the flood? How many human beings survived the flood? Noach, his wife, right? 3 sons and their wives. That's how many people altogether? 8. 8 people. Interesting number, 8. Number 8. But there was one guy hanging on the outside of the ark who was not quite human. He was in between. He was one of those Nephilim, those fallen angels that were powerful beings that were somewhere between a man and a malach, otherwise known as, he appears in this week's parsha too, Vayavo Hapalit. The refugee came and told Avram, they captured Lot, refugee from the war, right? Of the 4 and 5 kings. That's in this week's parsha? Not necessarily. Vayavo Hapalit, Chazal tell us, is from the flood. He escaped the flood. Who escaped the flood? Og Melech HaBashan, otherwise known as Eliezer Eved Avraham. They are one and the same person. Og Melech HaBashan turns out to be, in the end, an enemy of the Jewish people, right? Moshe was afraid of him and said, I don't know if I can beat this guy because he served Avram Avinu. He fought the war against the powerful 4 kings. Who were those powerful 4 kings? Avram's arch enemy, Nimrod, was one of them. That was Amraphel. There were 4 kings, right? Vayhi bimei Amraphel. It was in the era of Amraphel. Nimrod had influence, albeit he wasn't even from the family of Shem, or not even from the family of Yefes. He was from the cursed family of Ham. He was the son of Cush, right? He was African. He was an African. And he comes and stirs the world in a mass rebellion against Hashem, known as Dor HaFlaga, the generation that says we're going to build a tower that will protect us from any future divine punishment. They said once every 1,656 years, the world falls apart. Global warming. There's global warming. And we as a world have to come together to prevent the dastardly effects of global warming. And we're therefore going to build a tower. We're going to build a tower that is a tower of great technology, and we will somehow save the world from extinction. The ultimate kfira is that Hashem is not in charge. Hashem showed them by being, dispersed among the world, and their power was diminished. But so we have, just to summarize, and I'll take a question. We have introduced that Noach was a master technician. Noach works with his hands, his separated fingers, his 10 separated fingers, which represent the full complement. It's all the 10 spheros. He can create in this world tremendous things. He saved the world. He fed the world. It's amazing what he did. He used the Orev and he used the Yonah, right? And we suggested last week, we went over quickly, is that the Orev represented the 70 nations, the raven, and the Yonah represents Am Yisrael. What did Noach understand after the Mabul? Can't rely on the Orev. The raven is not going to be the answer to the problem. We need something else. We need Klal Yisroel, which is the dove, right? And what does the dove bring back? He brings back Shemen, the Ale Shemen, which represents Chachmas HaTorah. Chachmas HaTorah. There's something more here that the world will need to redeem it. And that's Klal Yisrael, who in their mouths will be what? The wisdom of Torah, which is the will of Hashem. And herein lies the difference between Noah and Avraham. Avram does not rely on his hands, although he had tremendous knowledge. It says that he was the personal advisor to all the kings of the world at that time, that he knew astrology so well, everybody came to talk to him about their mazal and what to do about it. Ironically, in the parsha here, Avram is named, it goes from the name Avram to Avraham with a hey. Why? Because the Gemara tells us He says, go away from astrology. Astrology will not limit you. Teva will not limit you. Right? Because Yisroel ein mazal li Yisroel. The Jewish people as a collective have no mazel. Some people say no Jews have any mazel. Some people say individual Jews have mazel. But the collective of Klal Yisrael doesn't have mazel. It's an interesting subject. So the transition here is between pure Chachmas Adam and Chachmas HaTorah, which is a higher wisdom, which means that it's not about what you accomplish with your hands as much as what you're going to accomplish with your mouth. The power of Avrohom is tefillah, the power to daven. Everything about Klal Yisrael that's unique about it is through its koach dibur and koach tefillah. Okay, right? So now that's the transition we're making. It's interesting that the orev that Noah used is a bird that almost has a almost human type of speech we mentioned. That it doesn't squawk. It actually kind of talks. Yeah. By the way, I noticed around this neighborhood is mostly ravens, not crows. Almost all ravens. You can tell by the squared out tail. And then they're much more quiet. Because crows crow every time they flap their wings, they crow, they make a lot of noise. Ravens have almost like they're almost, what do you call it, a reticent speech. They're careful with their mouth. They don't just waste sounds. And when they talk, they have very interesting variations of sounds. I'll ask you to go outside and listen. It's very, very interesting. And the raven is a very intelligent bird. It makes sense that it symbolizes the nations of the world. And it, however, as we said, and I'm not going to reiterate that point, didn't have the timimus of the Yonah, right? What do we say in Shir Shirim? Yonati tamati. Yonati tamati. My perfect dove. Because that's the difference between being a Tzadik and being a Tzadik Tammim. Even the Umos HaOlam have Tzadikim. Right? What do we call them? Chasidei Umos HaOlam. And there means that they do even beyond the letter of the law. But Tammimim requires another thing. I'm sorry, I'll stop here. Go, what's your question?
I just want to know about the hands. After Noah called his children and all the people then have open hands?
Yeah. And that's what Rashi brings to the Medrash that says that he prepared for them equipment to plow the earth. Whereas if they didn't have open fingers, they couldn't plow the earth. He says that was their pain. It says, Itzvon yadeinu min adama. Our hands are hurting from the ground because they were ticking with their hands. They couldn't make any tools. It was a terrible thing. They said, finally somebody. And of course, what does that mean? That symbolizes that Noah added a chachma into the world that was a mastery of technology, which Nimrod, of course, carries over. Nimrod was a master scientist, that he could build a remarkable tower. That tower was not a simple tower, okay? It was a technological marvel, according to Chazal, yeah.
Is there a parallel here between Noah and using the blueprint of Hashem and Betzalel, building the...
Absolutely,
the
absolutely.
That's a progression?
Yeah, because what's the main place in the Beis HaMikdash? The most important part of the Mishkan Beis HaMikdash is the Teva, the Aron Kodesh, right? So whereas Noach's Teva housed human wisdom, right? Betzalel's Teva held divine wisdom. Okay, and we cannot reach the level of Tammim unless we are aligned with the divine wisdom. Man's perfection cannot be except through the divine knowledge. Human knowledge will never lead you to anything more than a tzaddik. One person will argue, it's like democracy. 51% vote for this candidate, that candidate wins. Okay, that's how it works, right? The reality is that we see in the advent of Avram a tmimus. But let's define what tmimus means, right? What does Hashem say to Avram? Hishalech lefanai v'heyeh Tammim. Tammim. Avram's name was incomplete. Hashem adds the hey, right? Hashem is inserted into Avram's name, and he becomes complete. Sarai is individual. Sarah, Hashem's Shechina, is added into Sarah's name, and we become Tammim. They have the ability to give birth to the first Jewish child that would be given a bris at 8 days, right? And the bris also marks completion, because when something is orel, it means it has a chisaron, it has a blemish that needs to be removed, and when you remove it, then there's perfection. Just as you remove an imperfection from whatever, flour or gold or silver, whatever it is, you're removing imperfection, and then it's called pure. All right, I went to a bar mitzvah this past Shabbos, of a neighbor, a beautiful, wonderful boy, and his father, who's from Turkish extract, bought him a siddur, and I loved this. The siddur had a silver crown. A crown. Now I looked closer, you know what it said on it? 929, or 925, whichever one. It was actually real silver. There was a silver crown attached to the leather. Now, isn't that a beautiful message? Right? Your tefillos should be pure, and what's more important? Your tefillos or the kesef? No, the kesef is a keter to your tefillah, which is the point. Our success, our bounty will be through our koach ha-tefillah. That's how Klal Yisrael will be defined, particularly in Eretz Yisroel. Avram Avinu, when he crossed the border of Eretz Yisroel in Lech Lecha, and he did so as a Tammim. Why as a Tammim? Because our Chaim HaKadosh says, I also heard Rabbi Arush mention his shir, that it says Lech Lecha, okay, you're leaving your country, right? How long does it take to plan Aliyah? Avram was the first nefesh b'nefesh, right? Why? It says, Asa nefesh asher asa b'charan, right? So that was the original nefesh b'nefesh. Give them a plug. How long does it take? Well, first, there's a lot of paperwork involved. You have to file an application, you know. Then you have to worry about lift. You have to arrange, you know, all this, we got to get our stuff over there. And then people, you have to arrange flights. And what about the children? And what about Parnasa? Yeah. So Avram Avinu, according to the Chaim HaKadosh, dropped everything and ran. He's a Tammim. And a Tammim does Hashem's will 100% without inserting his own human knowledge. Wait a minute. Let me make a cheshbon here. First of all, to go to Eretz Yisrael, we need this, and then we need that. And what about and I have relatives here. What about my business? And cheshbonos, bikesh cheshbonos. Rabbi, man, seeks all his cheshbonos. If we had a penny for all, or a shekel, for all of our cheshbonos, we'd be multi-billionaires. I heard yesterday that the United Nations, which is, the modern day Dor Haflaga, the Tower of the United Nations is the Tower of Babel, and because they want to prevent God's presence from the world. Their main agenda is what? To prevent the Beis HaMikdash. Is there any agenda bigger than that for the United Nations? No, a little bit. They want people not to kill each other. Okay, a little bit, don't kill so much. Kill a little bit less. Don't use chemicals. Guns, no problem. You want to put machine guns on a truck, like the ISIS Nicks did, and run through the country and just plow people away? That's no problem. If you throw a chemical weapon, this is an Aveira. So that's, their level. But they want desperately to prevent Har HaBayis from being considered Jewish, and from the Beit Chas v'Shalom in their eyes, to have it be the place of a Jewish place of tefillah. Again, that's the ball game. What is the world fighting against? The prayers of the Jewish people. That's what frightens them more than anything, because that is our only and ultimate power. If the Jews have the Beis HaMikdash and are davening and doing the avoda, they are tachtenu. They are secondary. They are subservient, and they have to follow. They will have no choice. They're not so interested. Giving up their enjoyable lifestyle. Okay, so by the way, you know what? It's like considered, the Palestinians, Yimach Shemam, which is the ultimate. The Palestinians, as you look at it, representing that, are the exact opposite. Because what do they do really? Do they do anything? How many Nobel Prize winners have emerged from Birzeit University or the Islamic University of Gaza? Anybody winning the Nobel Prize? Anybody contributing to physics, chemistry, defense? Anything? No. But what are they contributing to the world? Words. A lot of words. And a lot of terror. It's either murder with an instrument of murder or defamation and destruction with words. They've decided to go through warfare. Not so much, they don't feel that they can win the warfare in conventional sense, because they can't. But they say we can win the battle of words. And they're brilliant at it. Absolutely brilliant. And we are Tammim. Not so good at it. We've gotten better at it. I read yesterday that there was a major victory. What's the big victory? The Israeli soccer team was not thrown out of the World Association of Soccer. Soccer is the most important sport in the world. Did you know that?
Yeah.
It's the only sport my kids don't play, by the way. They're good at everything, but they don't play soccer. It's beregel. You know that America was the first country that innovated sports that don't center around the feet. Did you know that? The whole world kicks with their feet. Do they use their hands? With their hands. They use their lower body, not their upper body. America was the first one who said you should use your upper body. That was already a step forward, okay? They wanted to kick Israel out of the world sport by saying, crimes against humanity. They have teams in the Palestinian territory against international law, crimes against humanity, etc., etc. And then there's this organization called Palestinian Media Watch that compiled all the violations and promotion of terror and glorification of terror that the Palestinian teams do, quote-unquote Palestinian teams do, and brought a counter lawsuit. And it was so powerful that they said, we can't vote on yours unless we consider that one. So instead of doing the right thing, which would be to kick the Palestinians out, chas v'shalom, because then they have to worry about Jews davening on Har Bayis, they just canceled both petitions. Israel can stay, right? Israel can stay. So the warfare it's a war of words. Therefore, we describe Avrohom Avinu as the master of prayer, the Baal Tefillah. Rabbi Nachman has an amazing story, which is worth reading, called the story of the Chacham and the Tam. One of his stories is also the Baal Tefillah, which is a great story. But for today's purposes, the Chacham and the Tam. Tam. What's the difference between a wise person and a Tam? In his story, he depicts two young men, one brilliant boy and one average intelligence, grew up together, best friends. The Chacham went to medical school and finished in 3 months. You ever hear those people? They go to medical school at age 5, PhD in physics by the time they're 15. That was this guy. He was so brilliant. He could do anything and everything. And the Tam was a shoemaker, and not a very good one. It says his shoes were always painful. Can you imagine they make these orthopedic shoes? He was the reverse. All his shoes were exceedingly painful. He only knew how to make triangular shoes, and wide in the back, so that it didn't fit in the back and it didn't fit in the front. For the toes, it was too tight, and for the back, it was slipping out. That was the only shoe he knew. But he still was able to sell a certain amount of them for people who were absolutely desperate or very poor people, and he made a nominal amount of money, and he was happy with that. And anytime anybody said to him, Oh, he's such a lousy, your product compared to this one. He says, that's their business, this is my business. I have no problem. I'm happy with my life and leave me alone. I have no business with anybody else. Okay? He was also very poor, and he used to say to his wife, bring me my mink coat. And she would bring him like this tattered rag that they shared because they only had one coat. And he would put, I've got the best mink coat in the world. Wow. And he'd bring me my soup, and it was like basically tea. Wow, what a soup you made. And what was upshot? That he was happy with his life circumstances no matter what. Unconditionally happy. That's Tammim. No conditions. I'm 100% happy with whatever Hashem gives me. The end of the story is, and it's a long story, the Chacham goes from profession to profession, from being a doctor to being a tailor, fine clothing, to being a watchman, a jeweler, and he's never happy with what he does. He says if somebody had one bad word about his suit, or if one patient said that no, maybe he didn't cure in the right way, he was so bent out of shape that he wasn't perfect, right? That he was ois mensch, and he went on. The key point of the story is that the king was interested in these guys because they were such a story. People said, you know about these two friends, the Chacham and the Tam? They were like almost like cartoons almost. They were so different and unique. So the king says, yeah, I'd like to meet them. And he sends them an invitation. So the Tam gets the invitation, and he's in his hovel, and he says, a huge carriage pulls up from the king's people and say, you have an invitation to meet the king, and he calls his wife. He says, wow, the king wants to meet me. I'm so excited. I'm going. Lech lecha. I'm out of here. Lech lecha. The king wants me. So they said, you know what? You need to, freshen up a bit. You need to, we need to give you some clean clothes. And they dress him up beautifully. They take him to the king. And he's the straightest guy because Tam means emes, the truth. He only knows it one way. There's no gray. There's no inserting human justifications and all sorts of, what do you call those? What do you call that? When you justify something in your mind? Rationalizations. Thank you. I've been here 6 years. Both my English and my Hebrew are deteriorating. That's the problem. Because we're in Beit Shemesh, Baruch Hashem. So no rationalizations. So he was given certain responsibilities. It was a job, a small job, like to be a manager in a certain village, and he was so honest, and he was so not, had no agenda, no chachmas, that people trusted him. And he started to move up the ladder. And then the governorship came open, and then a ministerial position, and he ends up being one of the top ministers of the king, because he's honest. Nobody can buy him. He has no agenda. He's fair to everyone. He's a Tam. Rises up and up the ladder. He went from a nothing, from a shoemaker, to being the minister of the king. What happened to the Chacham? The Chacham got the same message, and he says, wait a minute. Why would the king want to see me? This must be a trick. This must be a plot. Somebody's trying to make fun of me. And let's go back to original. Who says there even is a king? And then he works up a whole argument with himself that there is no king. And he convinces the messenger who works for the king that he says, did you ever see the king? He goes, what do you mean? I'm just a messenger. Why would I see the king? You have to be in the palace. He goes, do you really believe that there's a king out there? Or maybe they're just like, it's a whole coup. It's a conspiracy. There are some people who are running us and they're treating us like fools. And he decided to take on the mission of going around the country and around the world to prove that there was no king. And he goes from place to place, and wherever he goes, they're hated and despised because most people believe in the king. And he goes further and further until he literally descends into Gehenna. But he doesn't believe that he's in Gehenna. He thinks that the Satan and everybody who's beating him up are just some guys. Eventually they come into the company of the Tam, his old friend who's the minister of the king, and he says to him, he doesn't even know that he's in Gehenna. He says, you're in Gehenna, you don't even know where you are. No, these men are bad guys, they're beating me up. There must be some scoundrels. He says, look, there's only one thing I can do for you, and I'm going to call Tzadik. He's going to daven for you. And he finally agrees to allow the Tzadik to daven for him, pulls him out of Gehenna, and they're all united. That's the happy ending of the story. It's a great story, you have to read it. But what's the concept? The concept is very simple. Atam believes in Hashem, believes in the Koach of Tefillah, believes in Chachamim, has simple faith. This is Am Yisrael. This is the difference between Noach, where you're a tzaddik, and the difference between a tzaddik and a tzaddik Tammim. Okay. That being said, let's go a little bit deeper into what Avram prays for, okay? And we'll see. One of the toughest parts is understanding Avram's tefillah. Who does Avram daven for in this week's parsha, right? Who does Avram daven for? He davens for several people. First time he walks into Eretz Yisroel, where does he stop? That was already going back in Parshas Lech Lecha. Where does he stop when he gets into Eretz Yisroel? He goes to Shechem, because that's a place of division and problems for Am Yisrael, right? Goes and davens for his future generations. He says, there's not shalom over here. Things are not b'shalom. They're not tamim. They're not whole. Shechem is the place where the kingdom of Hashem was divided, the 10 tribes and the 2 tribes. So he goes and tries to make it whole. He's a tamim by essence. Everything should be shalom. First thing he does is he goes there. And then, when Klal Yisrael came into Eretz Yisrael, there was one guy who stole, in Yeshua's time, who was that guy who stole from the Cherem? He stole from what was supposed to be destroyed. Achan. Achan took for himself a few choice morsels from the spoils, right? And what happens? And Klal Yisrael has a loss, and eventually identify that Achan was the one. A lottery identifies as the one. And we get rid of him. That was the place called Ai was the place where they had a defeat because of Achan. So Avram goes and davens between Beit El and Ai. Strange. Why didn't he go straight to Ai? He went straight to Shechem. No, because Shechem was also a place where when Klal Yisrael was unified, it was good, right? But Ai was only negative because over there Klal Yisrael suffered a defeat. So he goes between Beit El, place of Hashem, where Yaacov Avinu would get, right, the nevuah of the ladder, which is surviving the Golus and maintaining the hope for Eretz Yisrael. And he's kind of between Beit El and Ai. He plants his tent to say, I want to help what goes on in Ai by drawing in the power of Beit El. What happened in Beit El? Yaakov took 12 stones, put them under his head, and he turned into one Shalem Tam. There was no divergence. Am Yisrael was united. Here Achan broke off for his own individual agenda. He broke off. He broke the shlemut. So Avram goes to daven. So Avram is basically davening that there should be tamimus, shlemut. Does he want anybody in the world to be destroyed like they were in the Mabul? Absolutely not. Was Noach ready to allow certain people to be destroyed as long as some of the tzaddikim were saved? Yes. Now that leads us to a very big enigma from this week's parsha. Who remembers? Avram, of course, it's very explicit here, tries to save the people of Sodom. Sodom had how many cities? 5 cities. Okay, so what is Avram's first play? He says, maybe there are